3 years ago, Penelope Murray saved a mafia boss and lost her heart in 3 impossible days, then vanished the night his world exploded, taking a secret he didn't know existed. She rebuilt her life in Chicago with her sister and little daughter, believing distance and silence would keep them safe from the Doyle family and the enemies still hunting them both. But when Rowan Doyle walked into a Chicago hotel and saw her standing there, the woman he thought he'd lost forever, 3 years of silence shattered in an instant. Now he knows what she's been hiding, and he's not the only one who just found her. Rowan Doyle stood in the basement of his downtown Boston office building with his hands in his pockets and concrete walls swallowing every sound. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, no windows, the kind of place where things happened that nobody talked about later. The man kneeling 3 feet away was begging, "Please forgive me, Mr. Doyle." His voice broke. "Please." Rowan's eyes narrowed. He studied the face in front of him like he was reading a contract for loopholes. When he spoke, his voice came out flat and final. "In my world, there's no room for mercy anymore." He turned and walked toward the steel door without looking back. His footsteps echoed against concrete, steady, unhurried. Arthur stood near the doorway watching his boss cross the space. "Boss?" Rowan kept his gaze forward and his hand found the door handle. "Handle it." Arthur's head lowered once in acknowledgement. He turned his attention to the man still on his knees. The door closed behind Rowan. One gunshot cracked through the basement. Rowan Doyle was already climbing the stairs. The same day, the same hour, 1,000 miles west in Chicago. Penelope Murray stood at the front of the conference room at the Halcyon Grand Hotel in a charcoal suit and pulled-back hair that said "professional without trying." 8 staff members sat around the table, housekeeping supervisors, front desk managers, concierge leads. Her title read Operations and Brand Experience, Assistant Director. Guest satisfaction improved 12% last quarter. She clicked to the next slide. But VIP floor response times are still too slow. Anything over 8 minutes is unacceptable. 20 minutes later, the meeting ended. Staff filed out with assignments and deadlines. Mark Cruz waited until the room cleared. Her manager, general manager of the Halcyon Grand. "Well handled, Penny." He smiled. "You've come a long way. You're hard-working, ethical. You'll be promoted to director soon." Pride warmed her chest, but she kept her expression steady. "Thank you, Mr. Cruz. I'm doing my best." His smile faded slightly as he checked his watch. "You've been on duty for 18 hours. Go home, sleep. That's an order. We'll see you day after tomorrow." She wanted to argue. The words sat ready on her tongue, but exhaustion won. "Yes, sir." Meanwhile, in Boston, upstairs, Rowan's office sat dark with Venetian blinds half closed against afternoon light, trying to push through the glass. He stood at the sideboard, pouring 3 fingers of whiskey into crystal that caught what little light existed in the room. The door opened. Arthur stepped inside and stopped when he saw the glass in Rowan's hand. "Boss?" He glanced at his watch. Noon, then back at the whiskey. Something shifted in his expression before he spoke again. "Maeve's here." Rowan lifted the glass to his lips and drank. The burn went down smooth, familiar. He set the tumbler on the bar with careful precision. "Tell her I'm not seeing anyone." Arthur's fingers curled, then stilled at his side. "Boss?" He paused. "You weren't like this before. You never refused Maeve." Rowan's mouth curved into something that might have been a smile once. Now it just looked sharp. "I used to make mistakes." He poured another measure. "Feelings, emotions. Not anymore." His hand lifted the glass again. "Not anymore." Arthur left without another word. Rowan lifted the glass. The burn was easier than remembering what her voice sounded like. Maeve stood in the corridor with her back to floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked Boston. 42 floors up, and the city spread below like a map of everything her nephew used to care about before he'd stopped caring about anything at all. Footsteps approached from behind. She didn't turn. Arthur cleared his throat. She glanced over her shoulder. "How is he?" Arthur's head moved twice, side to side. Maeve's attention returned to the window, the harbour, the old neighbourhoods, watching a man destroy himself one decision at a time. 3 years. Her voice came out quiet. He's gotten worse, more ruthless, harder. She turned to face Arthur fully. Is he drinking? Yes, ma'am. Silence stretched between them. Maeve's expression hardened with decision. We need to move faster on the marriage situation. She pulled out her phone. Contact Elizabeth. Tell her to stop by his office today. Make it look natural. Arthur's expression didn't change, but something shifted behind his eyes. You think that'll work? No. Maeve turned from the window. But watching him destroy himself isn't working either. Penny's apartment sat 15 minutes from the hotel. 2 bedrooms. Clean, safe, nothing like the life she'd left behind in Boston. Nora opened the door before Penny's key cleared the lock. 20 years old now. Long dark hair, bright eyes, Northwestern scholarship that kept her drowning in papers and deadlines. I've been waiting. I need to get to class. Penny kissed her sister's cheek. How's Ella? Did she eat lunch? Did she nap? Fed, changed, sleeping like an angel. Nora grabbed her bag. I'm late. The door closed. Penny dropped her things and moved down the hallway toward the pink glow coming from the second bedroom. Stuffed animals lined one wall. A mobile hung over the crib, catching afternoon light through rose curtains. Ella lay sleeping in her crib. 2 years old. Dark hair spread across the pillow. The moment Penny stepped into the room, the child stirred. Sensing her mother before seeing her, her eyes opened. Mommy? Penny crossed the room and lifted her daughter into her arms, breathed in that baby smell, felt small arms wrap around her neck and hold tight. Hi, baby girl. Her voice came out thick. I missed you. Ella pulled back and smiled. Green eyes found Penny's hazel ones and held. Every time Penny looked at her daughter, she saw him. The father who would never know this child existed. The man whose family had killed her father, whose world had stolen her hearing, who belonged to the same blood that had destroyed her childhood. And yet, the man she'd loved in the dark for 3 days, that changed everything. Her throat moved around words she couldn't say to a 2-year-old who only wanted her mother. She carried Ella to the window and looked east across the lake, toward where Boston waited 1,500 miles beyond the horizon. Some nights, the anger burned hotter than anything else. The Doyles took everything, her father, her hearing, her chance at a normal life. But other nights, when Ella laughed or said a new word or looked at her with those green eyes, Penny felt something she hated herself for feeling. She wondered if he ever thought about her at all. Elizabeth Connolly walked through the office lobby with auburn hair swept back and heels clicking against marble in a rhythm that made people turn. Blue eyes, long lean frame, in a dress that fit like it had been designed for her specifically. Designer bag. The kind of woman who knew exactly what kind of attention she commanded. At the end of the corridor, Arthur stood outside Rowan's office door. He saw her coming, and his shoulders lifted with an inhale that said, "Here we go." Elizabeth stopped in front of him with a smile that suggested she'd already won whatever game they were playing. "Open the door, Arthur." His hand flexed at his side. "He's already gone through half a bottle." Arthur's voice stayed low. Maybe not the best time. Elizabeth's hand found the door handle. She met Arthur's gaze without blinking. "I'll make him feel better. Don't worry." She pushed the door open. Rowan sat behind his desk with a whiskey glass in one hand and his attention on the computer screen. He didn't look up when she entered, didn't acknowledge her presence until she spoke. "Darling?" Her voice carried practiced warmth. "Came to take you out for a bit." His gaze lifted. Empty. The kind of empty that didn't register emotion one way or another. "You should have called first." The words came out flat. Not a question. A statement of fact about boundaries she'd just crossed. Elizabeth moved around the desk with confidence that suggested she'd done this before. Her fingers found his collar, long red nails traced along the fabric toward his neck. I shouldn't have to make an appointment with my fiancé, should I? Her attention caught on the computer screen. She leaned closer. The Halcyon Grand Hotel, Lake Michigan. Her eyebrows lifted. Are you buying a hotel? Rowan set his glass down with careful precision. He stood. The motion put distance between them that felt deliberate. Elizabeth. His voice stayed controlled. I think you're overestimating what's between us. She didn't look offended. Her mouth curved into something that might have been amusement as she settled one hip against his desk. We're getting married in a month, Rowan. She tilted her head. What exactly am I overestimating? She moved toward him again. Her fingers found his face, traced along his jaw. Come on. Let me steal you away from here. Her voice dropped lower. Let me help you relax. Her lips found his neck. Rowan's eyes closed. He hadn't let anyone this close in years, but nothing about this felt right. No peace, no sense of belonging. Wrong scent, wrong touch, wrong everything. The memory hit him without warning. Dark hair instead of auburn, hazel eyes instead of blue, a woman who'd made him feel human when he'd forgotten how. He pushed Elizabeth back, gently but firmly. I warned you from the beginning. His throat moved once. Don't expect love. I'm not that kind of man. He stepped around her toward where his jacket hung. This marriage is a business arrangement, nothing more. Elizabeth watched him for 3 seconds, then she shrugged and sat fully on the desk. Whatever. Her tone stayed light. Doesn't mean we can't have some fun. Rowan pulled his jacket on. I have work. He moved toward the door without looking back. You're on your own. The hallway felt easier to breathe in. Arthur. His head of security appeared at his shoulder within 2 strides. Tomorrow. Bring 2 men. Rowan kept walking toward the elevator. We're leaving the city for a few nights. Arthur matched his pace. Where to, boss? Lake Michigan, the Halcyon Grand. Arthur's posture sharpened slightly. He knew that tone, the one that said this wasn't a vacation. Business, boss? Rowan's hand found the elevator button. Important business. He paused. Don't contact the hotel. I don't want them knowing who's coming until we walk through the door. Arthur's head dipped once in acknowledgement. Lunch break came with the kind of relief that only 12 straight hours of work could produce. Penny sat in the staff dining room with 3 co-workers from operations while Maria scrolled through her phone and laughed at something on the screen. You have to see this dress. Maria turned the phone toward Penny. My cousin's wedding next month. Penny leaned closer. The dress was nice, traditional, but Maria's thumb slipped and the screen jumped to her Instagram feed. A magazine page filled the display. Boston's most eligible bachelor to wed. Penny's breathing forgot its rhythm. The headline sat above a photo of a man in a tailored suit standing next to a woman with auburn hair and a smile that suggested she'd won the lottery. Below the image, text filled the screen in neat columns. Rowan Doyle, owner of Doyle Hotel Group and Doyle Construction, will marry Elizabeth Connolly, daughter of prominent Boston businessman Edmund Connolly, on June 20th. The union brings together 2 of Boston's most powerful families, with sources confirming a major business partnership between Doyle Enterprises and Connolly Holdings. The countdown to the city's most anticipated wedding of the year has begun. Heat climbed Penny's neck. Her hands wanted to shake, but she kept them still in her lap. Maria pulled the phone back. Sorry, wrong page. She kept scrolling. Here, the dress I was showing you. Penny forced a smile that felt tight across her face. It's beautiful. Her voice came out normal, steady, like her chest wasn't constricting around air that suddenly felt too thick to breathe. She stood with movements that required conscious effort. I need to get back. The brand audit reports are due before 4. Nobody questioned it. Penny Murray always worked, always had something that needed finishing, always left lunch early to handle one more task. She made it to her office before her hands started trembling. He was marrying someone else. Someone whose last name opened doors. Someone whose family had power and connections and everything Penny had never been able to offer. She pressed her palms flat against her desk and breathed through the ache spreading across her ribs. But waiting at home was Ella. Green eyes, dark hair, a smile that looked more like her father's every single day. The reminder steadied her. She walked back into the hallway with her shoulders straight and her expression blank. The afternoon brought its usual chaos. Guest complaints, maintenance issues, a mix-up with room assignments that took 40 minutes to untangle. Penny moved through it all with the kind of efficiency that had earned her 3 promotions in 3 years. She was halfway down the main corridor with an armful of folders when she saw him. Victor Lapkin stood near the concierge desk in a charcoal suit with Italian tailoring, tall, blonde, sharp features that belonged on magazine covers, late 30s with the kind of presence that made people look twice. The owner of the Halcyon Grand. He turned and his attention found her immediately. A smile spread across his face. Penny. He moved toward her with the confidence of someone who'd never been told no in his life. My hard-working and very capable assistant director. She stopped walking. Her grip tightened on the folders. Mr. Lapkin. She returned his smile because professionalism required it. You're here for the 10th anniversary gala, I assume. We're preparing something special. You'll be proud. His eyes held hers for 3 seconds longer than necessary. Something in his expression shifted. Interest. The kind that had nothing to do with hotel management. I have no doubt. His voice carried warmth that felt deliberate. You've never disappointed me, Penny. Heat spread across her cheeks before she could stop it. Victor Lapkin had been showing her this kind of attention for months now. Ever since last summer, when one of his friends stayed at the hotel and complained about the air conditioning at 2 in the morning, Penny had been the one to handle it. Fixed the problem in 20 minutes, and upgraded the guest to a suite without waking management. Victor heard about it the next day and sought her out personally to thank her. Since then, he'd made a point of stopping by whenever he visited. Small conversations, compliments about her work ethic, questions about her background that felt like more than professional curiosity. Penny had built her entire life around 3 things: work, Ella, and Nora. Men didn't factor into the equation. Couldn't factor in when every relationship meant questions she couldn't answer and secrets that would never stay buried. But Victor Lapkin made her feel visible in a way that both terrified and tempted her. He stepped closer, not invading her space but narrowing the distance enough that she had to tilt her head up to maintain eye contact. The gala. His mouth curved into something that might have been amusement. You owe me a dance, Penny. Her breath caught. She forced it to release slowly. I'm not sure assistant directors dance with hotel owners, Mr. Lapkin. Victor, he corrected her gently, and I think we can make an exception. He held her gaze for another beat. Then he turned to leave. 3 steps away he stopped and looked back over his shoulder. Your cheeks are red again. The smile he gave her carried enough warmth to make her skin feel too tight. The main entrance doors opened. Rowan Doyle walked through the lobby with 2 men following in tight formation and Arthur at his side. His attention swept the space the way it always did, automatic, assessing. Then his gaze caught on something near the corridor entrance, a young woman in hotel uniform, dark hair pulled back, standing with folders against her chest while a well-dressed man smiled down at her. Her cheeks flushed pink. Rowan stopped moving, his eyes narrowed. Something crossed his face, recognition. Then his mouth curved, just slightly, the ghost of a smile. But the smile died before it fully formed. His chest stopped moving, like breathing had become optional and he'd decided against it. Arthur appeared at Rowan's shoulder. He followed his boss's gaze and his posture went rigid. When he looked back at Rowan, concern etched itself across every line of his face. Boss? Rowan turned away. The motion looked deliberate, controlled, like it required effort. Get her to my room. His voice came out low, flat. Don't use yourself. Send the other one. He paused. I don't want her to know I'm here. Arthur's head dipped once. Rowan walked toward the elevators without looking back. Penny stood in the corridor with folders pressed against her chest and heat still burning across her cheeks. Victor Lapkin had disappeared around the corner. The hallway felt too quiet. She didn't know what to say if he asked again. Didn't know what she wanted him to ask. She had no idea that 30 feet away, someone had just seen everything. 45 minutes later, Penny sat at her desk working on gala preparations for 2 nights from now. Her office door flew open. Maria burst through, panic written across her face. "Penny, executive floor, one of the rooms. There's a problem." Penny stood immediately and grabbed her tablet. "Which guest? We've got VIPs on that floor. I need to know who I'm dealing with." Maria shrugged helplessly. "I don't know. New check-in, I think. Room 5800. Penny headed for the stairs. 5th floor, executive suites. When she reached room 5800, she stopped outside the door and smoothed her jacket. Her professional smile settled into place. She knocked. The door opened automatically. "Hello," her voice came out bright and energetic. "I'm Penny Murray, Assistant Director of Operations. I'm here to help with whatever issue." She stopped mid-sentence. The room sat dim with curtains half-drawn against afternoon light trying to push through floor-to-ceiling windows. A man sat in a leather chair facing the view with his back to the door, dark suit jacket, one hand holding a glass of what looked like whiskey. Something along her spine woke instantly. The man didn't move or acknowledge her presence, just sat there like he had all the time in the world. She hesitated, then forced herself to continue. "Whatever the problem is with your room, I'm here to assist." She took another step inside. The door closed behind her with a soft click. The man rose slowly from the chair, still facing away. Tall, very tall. His presence filled the space and made the room feel suddenly smaller. The scent, she knew, tobacco and amber. Her lungs forgot how to work. She knew this body. The way he held himself, the width of his shoulders, the exact angle of his posture. The man turned slowly. "Hello, Penelope." His voice was low and controlled. "It's been a long time." Her body moved before thought formed. One step back, instinct answering faster than logic. She couldn't name what moved through her, fear and longing and joy all tangled together. Could only stand there while her nervous system locked onto him and her breath shortened unconsciously. Rowan Doyle walked toward her with movements that looked deliberate and unhurried. Each step measured like he was giving her time to run if she wanted to. But running required legs that worked. His presence pressed into her awareness. The air between them felt charged, wrong and familiar at the same time. She wanted to back away and step closer at once, and the contradiction kept her frozen. He stopped, 2 steps away. His gaze found hers and held. Maybe 3 seconds, maybe longer. Time lost meaning when her pulse registered in her throat and her palms and behind her eyes. His eyes carried nothing, no warmth, no emotion, just cold assessment. This wasn't the man from Portsmouth, the one who'd held her in the dark and whispered promises, the one whose touch had made her feel seen. This was someone else, wearing his face. Her throat worked around words that refused to come. "Mr. Doyle," she finally managed. How did you find me?" His mouth curved into something that wasn't quite a smile, something sharper. "I didn't look for you, Penelope." Each word landed with weight. "If I had, believe me, I would have found you." A painful knot settled in her throat. He took another breath before continuing. "I came here on business. Saw you in the lobby." She tried to smile. Her face wouldn't cooperate. "I understand, Mr. Doyle." Her voice sounded steadier than she felt. "Of course. If you'd wanted to find me, you would have." His expression didn't change. His voice stayed flat and cold. "But you left without saying goodbye." He moved closer. One more step. Close enough that she could see the exact color of his eyes. Close enough that his cologne invaded every breath. Her pulse slammed through her entire body, wrists, temples, the base of her throat. Rowan tilted his head slightly. His eyes narrowed. "Why did you do that?" The question came out quiet and dangerous. "I wanted to hear it from you." She bit her lower lip, hard enough to hurt. This wasn't supposed to happen. She'd thought she'd never see him again, had built an entire life around that assumption. No speech prepared, no explanation rehearsed. Her voice broke. "I was scared." Tears burned behind her eyes. She blinked hard, but one escaped anyway. One more step backward. Her shoulders hit the door. "Your family killed my father, Mr. Doyle." The words came out raw, honest. "What exactly did you expect me to do?" Something flickered across his face. His mouth curved at one corner, a smile that looked like it hurt. He didn't look away, didn't give her space, just kept that cold gaze locked on hers. Then he moved, one final step closer. His body didn't touch hers, but the distance carried tension, in shared breath, in the heat radiating off his chest. Penny had to tilt her head back to maintain eye contact. He seemed taller than she remembered. The space between them felt impossibly small. His hand lifted, palm flat against the door, right beside her head. "Are you afraid of me, Penelope?" His voice carried no emotion, just the question. She straightened her spine, lifted her chin. She wasn't that girl anymore, couldn't be that girl in front of him. But when she spoke, the words came out barely above a whisper. "No." "Why not?" He leaned closer. "Because you still think I'm a good man." This time she managed a real smile, small, bitter. "No." She held his gaze. "Because I'm not that girl anymore." His expression shifted. Something moved behind his eyes. He reached up slowly. His fingers found the strand of hair that had fallen across her face, lifted it, tucked it behind her ear. His attention caught on her hearing aid. The smile that touched his face didn't reach his mouth. It lived in his eyes. Soft, brief, then gone. "You're still using the same one." She nodded once. He pulled back, like she'd burned him. Turned away, put distance between them with 3 long strides toward the window. "Are you happy here, Penelope?" His back stayed to her. "Is your sister okay?" Then quieter. "Are you happy?" The space between them let her breathe again. She pulled herself together, straightened her jacket, found her voice. "Yes, Mr. Doyle. Thank you. Professional, polite. I have a good job. I like my life here." His head dropped forward. He didn't want her to see his face, didn't want to see hers. Both of them hiding behind words neither meant. "Well then," his voice came out flat, final. "I'm glad I got to see you." Silence stretched. "You can go now, Penelope." She stood there for 3 or 4 seconds, trying to process. What was happening? What was this? "You can go?" "Of course, Mr. Doyle." The words came automatically. "If you need anything, my office is on the 2nd floor. Operations management." The minute the sentence left her mouth, she realized how stupid it sounded. She turned, grabbed the door handle, pulled it open and walked through fast enough to qualify as running. The hallway blurred. Her heels hit marble too loud. Her breathing came too fast. She couldn't slow down until she reached the stairwell and the door closed behind her. 3 years. 3 years. And this was how they'd meet again? This was it? The Doyle family. Everything wrong in the world, wearing expensive suits and cold eyes. And she would never, ever let her daughter become one of them. The whiskey bottle sat half empty on the desk. Rowan poured another glass as late afternoon light died against the windows. His back stayed to the door. The emptiness behind his eyes, the disappointment sitting heavy in his chest. He didn't want anyone seeing it. Didn't want to explain it. How had he let a girl affect him like this? But she wasn't a girl anymore. Penelope Murray had walked into that room looking like a woman who'd survived 3 years without him just fine, professional and polished in ways that made that night in Portsmouth feel like something he'd imagined, except for the moments when she'd looked at him and her cheeks had flushed, when her voice had trembled, when her scent, something clean and simple, had filled the small space between them and reminded him what peace felt like. That feeling, the one he'd spent 3 years trying to forget, safety and belonging and something pure in a world that had none of it left. "I remember who I was with you," he whispered to the empty room. The door opened behind him. "Boss?" Arthur's voice came out quiet and careful. "You need anything?" Rowan swallowed tension quietly. His hand flexed at his side before he forced himself to relax. The man she was talking to in the lobby. He didn't turn around. Who is he? Arthur moved closer and pulled up something on his phone. Victor Lapkin, Russian-American. Owns this hotel and a few other properties in the area. Connected to the Bratva. Low level but connected. Chicago knows him. Respects him. He keeps his head down. Rowan's mouth curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. Innocence always attracts the darkness. He turned finally, glass in hand. Doesn't it? Arthur met his gaze and said nothing. Rowan's posture shifted as the decision settled. Set up a meeting. Tomorrow. I want to talk to him. Arthur's expression didn't change, but something moved behind his eyes, calculation mixed with concern. What business do we have with Victor Lapkin? Rowan lifted the glass to his lips and drank, letting the burn ground him. We're going to make sure he keeps his hands off things that don't belong to him. Arthur studied him for 3 seconds, then nodded once and turned toward the door. I'll make the call. The door closed. Rowan stood alone in the dimming light, glass in hand, the taste of whiskey mixing with the memory of her voice saying Mr. Doyle, like she didn't know him at all. Like 3 years had erased Portsmouth completely. His chest tightened in recognition of something he couldn't name, wouldn't name, not here, not now. He poured another drink. Victor Lapkin stood at the window of his 3rd-floor suite, watching late morning light cut across Lake Michigan, a meeting request from Rowan Doyle. The Doyle family, Boston Irish, old money wrapped around older violence, didn't make social calls without reason. He knew the name the way everyone in their world knew the name. Rowan Doyle had taken over 8 years ago when his father died, and the stories painted a picture of a man who made the previous generation look soft. Victor pulled his phone from his jacket and dialed a number he only used when necessary. The line connected after 2 rings. Gorski. The voice came through, rough and aged, carrying the weight of too many years spent giving orders that couldn't be questioned. Mr. Gorski. Victor kept his tone respectful, professional. I have a situation I need guidance on. Silence stretched on the other end. Not empty. Listening. Evaluating. Rowan Doyle has requested a meeting with me, Victor continued. I need to know where we stand with the Doyle family. Are we in conflict? Do we have business together I'm not aware of? The silence extended for 3 more seconds before Gorski's voice returned, rougher now, carrying something that sounded like old anger barely contained. We had arrangements with Killian Doyle. Profitable arrangements. The words came measured, deliberate. When Killian went to prison, Rowan shut those operations down, said the family needed to run cleaner. He cut our revenue streams, several of them. Victor's hand flexed at his side. I see. Find out what he wants, Victor. Gorski's voice dropped lower. And remember, keep your enemies close, closer than your friends. Learn his weaknesses. Every man has them, even the ones who pretend they don't. Of course, sir. The line went dead. Victor stood there for a moment, phone still in his hand, looking out at the lake without really seeing it. Rowan Doyle would be here soon, and whatever he wanted, it wasn't going to be straightforward. Men like that never were. He pulled up his laptop and started typing. Background research, financial records, property holdings. If Rowan Doyle had a weakness, Victor needed to find it before their meeting. His fingers moved across the keyboard with purpose while his mind catalogued possibilities. Next morning, down the administrative corridor, Penelope Murray walked with her tablet clutched against her chest, praying she wouldn't see him. Please don't let me run into him. Please let him have checked out. She had every right to be here. This was her workplace. But the part of her that had spent 3 years building walls only to watch them crumble yesterday, that part wanted to run. Penny turned the corner toward her office and froze. Down the hall at the far end of the corridor, maybe 40 feet away, Rowan Doyle stood with Arthur. That same steady posture, that same presence that made everything around him feel smaller. They were talking, Rowan's back partly to her, Arthur facing his direction. Her breathing forgot its rhythm. She moved fast, stepping backward around the corner and pressing her spine against the wall where they couldn't see her. Her pulse slammed through her entire body, wrists, temples, the base of her throat, and she hated herself for the reaction, the way he'd walked toward her in Portsmouth, that quiet certainty, the way his presence had filled every room, making the air feel charged and dangerous and safe all at once. And later, his hands mapping her skin with a reverence that had made her forget everything. Stop. Penny forced the memories back where they belonged. She risked a glance around the corner, keeping most of her body hidden behind the wall. Rowan was walking toward a door at the end of the corridor. Victor Lapkin's office. Arthur followed a step behind. She watched as Victor's door opened and they stepped inside, the door closing behind them. Her brow furrowed. What possible business could Rowan Doyle have with Victor Lapkin? Victor was already standing when his door opened, hand extended across the desk. "Mr. Doyle, what an honor. If we'd known you were coming, I would have insisted on hosting you downtown." He gestured toward the chairs. "Please, sit. How can I help you?" Rowan Doyle crossed the office and settled into the chair like he owned it. His gaze swept the room once, before landing back on Victor. Arthur remained standing behind him. "I've always appreciated Lake Michigan." Rowan's voice came out low. "The Doyle properties focus on urban hotels, but this location interests me." Victor leaned back, his posture relaxed even as his instincts sharpened. "I'm glad to hear it. I want to buy it." The words landed flat. Final, no preamble, no negotiation in the tone. Victor's jaw flexed once. He kept his expression neutral, but his mind was already racing through implications and consequences and the fact that Rowan Doyle didn't make offers like this without ulterior motives. "That's unexpected," he said carefully. "May I ask why? You said yourself you don't typically invest in resort properties." Rowan's mouth curved into something sharp. "I have my reasons." Silence stretched. Victor studied him, looking for tells, for anything that would explain this, but Rowan Doyle's face gave nothing. "I see." Victor straightened in his chair. "What's your offer?" Rowan pulled a pen from his jacket and wrote a number on the notepad sitting on Victor's desk, slid it across. Victor's eyebrows lifted despite his effort to stay neutral. The number was good. Better than good. It was the kind of offer that made refusing look stupid. "That's generous," he admitted. "Then we have a deal." Rowan's posture shifted as he prepared to stand. "Have your lawyers contact mine. We can finalize paperwork within the week." "Wait!" Victor raised one hand. "Mr. Doyle, I appreciate the offer, truly. But this hotel represents 10 years of my work. It's not just a property to me." He paused, choosing his words with care. "I'll need time to consider. A few days at least." Rowan stood slowly, buttoning his jacket with measured precision. "I'm here for 3 more days," he said. "Give me an answer within 48 hours. He turned toward the door. Arthur moved to follow. "Mr. Doyle." Victor rose from his chair. "We're hosting our 10th anniversary gala tonight. It would be an honor to have you attend. We've put together something special. Live music, excellent food, all of Chicago's best people in one room." His smile widened slightly. "I'd enjoy the opportunity to show you what makes this property worth your interest." Rowan stopped at the door, turned his head just enough to make eye contact. His expression carried nothing, no warmth, no interest, no emotion at all, but he inclined his head once in what might have been agreement. Then he was gone, Arthur closing the door behind them. Victor stood alone in his office, staring at the number on his notepad. Rowan Doyle didn't buy properties on impulse. Men like that acquired assets, eliminated problems. Right now, Victor needed to figure out which category he fell into. The hallway outside felt colder somehow. Rowan's phone vibrated in his pocket before he reached the end of the hallway. He pulled it out, saw the name, and his shoulders tightened automatically. He answered. "Maeve." "What are you doing in Chicago, Rowan?" Her voice came through sharp. "I haven't heard from you in a week." Arthur stepped back, giving him space. "I had business to handle here." Silence stretched on the other end. When Maeve spoke again, her tone had gone cold. "Don't tell me this is about the Murray girl." Rowan's jaw clenched hard enough to hurt. His hand flexed at his side before he forced it to relax. "You need to stop interfering in my business, Maeve." Each word came out quiet. I'm not the boy you could steer anymore. The entire family depends on every decision you make." Her accent thickened. "Don't forget that. I'm your common sense, Rowan. Being the head of this family doesn't mean following your desires." Rowan ended the call. Arthur stood nearby, pretending he hadn't heard. From the outside, Rowan Doyle at 37 looked like a man who felt nothing, controlled, ruthless, unmoved by anything. But the storm raging inside him, the one that hadn't stopped since Penelope Murray walked back into his life, that was something no one could see, and no one ever would. Penelope left work early, her coat already buttoned as she passed through the administrative corridor toward the exit. She'd stayed late 3 nights this week preparing for tonight's gala. She'd earned the early departure. Across the marble lobby, near the elevators, Victor Lapkin stood talking with 2 members of the maintenance staff. When he saw her, something in his expression shifted. A small smile. Not the polished, professional version he wore in meetings, something warmer. Penny's lips curved slightly in return before she could stop herself. Mr. Lapkin wasn't like Rowan Doyle. The thought arrived unbidden, immediate. Victor was warm where Rowan was ice, approachable where Rowan commanded distance, an honest businessman who treated his staff like human beings instead of pieces on a board. And Penny had noticed over the past year that Victor noticed her. The toy he'd given Ella at the Christmas party, a stuffed giraffe that her daughter still carried everywhere, the way he always stopped to chat when their paths crossed in the hallways, asking about her day like he genuinely wanted to know. Most hotel owners barely learned their employees' names. Victor remembered that Penny's daughter was 2 and that she'd been promoted from housekeeping 6 months ago. Other staff had started to notice his attention. Linda from reservations had made a comment last week about the boss's favorite. But Penny had never been the type to use situations like that to her advantage, and she wasn't about to start. She pushed through the revolving door and raised her hand for a taxi. The black sedan, parked 3 cars down, went unnoticed as she climbed into the cab and gave her address. Inside the taxi, Penny watched the streetlights blur past the window and let herself think about what she'd been avoiding all week. She hadn't seen Rowan Doyle face to face since yesterday evening in his suite. She'd spent today avoiding hallways where he might be. She didn't want to see him, couldn't afford to see him. He hadn't come to Chicago for her anyway. Whatever business he had with Victor, it had nothing to do with Penelope Murray. That certainty should have brought relief. Instead, her throat tightened, and her eyes burned with something she refused to name. How could she feel relieved and devastated at the same time? How did grief and gratitude occupy the same space in her chest? Inside her apartment, Penny scooped Ella into her arms and buried her face in the little girl's hair. Life was strange. A piece of both of them existed in her arms right now, Rowan's green eyes looking back at her from Ella's face, and he had no idea. Probably wouldn't care even if he knew. After all, he was marrying someone from his world, someone appropriate, Elizabeth Connolly, with her old money and her perfect pedigree. Later, standing in front of her closet, Penny stared at the black lace dress she'd bought for tonight. Her hand flexed at her side before reaching for the hanger. She'd only worn black lace once before, in Portsmouth, in that house where everything had felt like a fever dream she couldn't wake from. Penny swallowed against the memory and pulled the dress free. Rowan Doyle was too serious for galas anyway, too focused to waste an evening on champagne and dancing. He wouldn't be there tonight. She was certain of it. By 7:30, the grand ballroom had begun filling with guests. Penny moved through the organized chaos, wearing her black lace dress and her professional smile, checking table arrangements, greeting arrivals, solving small crises before they became large ones. Tonight mattered. The gala celebrated the hotel's 10th anniversary, but it also showcased the work she'd put into the events division over the past 6 months. Her name was on half the planning documents. If everything went smoothly, it would mean something for her career. She passed a tray of champagne flutes and grabbed one, draining half of it in 2 swallows to steady her pulse. Appetizers circulated. Conversation built to a pleasant hum. Then the lights dimmed, and Victor Lapkin stepped onto the small stage near the head table. Penny had found her seat at the junior management table. She applauded with the others as Victor began speaking about the hotel's history, the quality of service they strived to provide, the gratitude he felt toward the staff who made it possible. His gaze found hers briefly, held for half a second longer than professional before moving on. "Now," Victor concluded with a smile that made several women in the audience sit up straighter, "let's focus on the excellent meal being served, and then we'll dance to some beautiful music and make this a night to remember." The applause swelled as he stepped down. Linda, the reservation manager seated beside Penny, leaned close with a knowing grin. "Your beauty really came out tonight, Penny. You're one of those women who shines at events like this." Heat rose to Penny's cheeks. "Thank you, Linda. You look beautiful too." The executive table sat directly next to theirs. As Victor returned to his seat, he paused beside Penny's chair and bent low enough that only she could hear. "You look stunning tonight, Penny." His voice carried warmth she'd learned to recognize. "And I know how much work you put into making this evening happen." Penny's smile felt genuine for the first time all week. "Thank you, Mr. Lapkin." She glanced around the ballroom, centerpiece candles burning evenly, servers moving efficiently, guests engaged in conversation. Then her attention snagged on something odd. At the far end of the management section, one table sat empty, 8 place settings, untouched champagne flutes, no name cards. Penny leaned toward Linda. "Was there an empty table in the final seating chart? That one wasn't there when I reviewed everything yesterday." Linda followed her gaze and frowned. "Added last minute. I don't know who requested it. They didn't give names." Something about that felt wrong. She pushed the unease down and reached for her wine glass. By the time the music started, she'd finished her second glass, and the tight knot in her chest had loosened. Victor stood from the executive table and scanned the room with easy confidence. "If someone doesn't break the ice," he announced to the tables nearby, "everyone will be too shy to dance." He extended his hand toward Penny. "Come on, Penny. Let's open the floor for our guests." Every head at both tables turned to look. Penny's face went bright red as she took his hand and let him guide her onto the empty dance floor. Victor's hand settled warm and steady at her waist, his other hand capturing hers. He moved her into the dance with easy grace. "You're blushing," he murmured, his smile widening. "Shy as always. I find that incredibly attractive." Penny's gaze dropped to his shoulder. His hand on her bare back shifted slightly, his thumb drawing small circles against her skin, just above the dress's low-cut edge. "You interest me, Penny." Her breathing forgot its rhythm for a moment before she forced it steady. "There are plenty of women around you, Mr. Lapkin. I'm sure you meet far more interesting people than me." His expression softened, something genuine moving behind his eyes. "You seem more real than anyone else." The ballroom door opened across the room. Penny didn't see it, didn't notice Arthur holding the door or the tall figure in the dark suit stepping through. But she felt the shift in the room's energy. Rowan Doyle's gaze found the dance floor immediately. Found her. Arthur glanced at his boss's face and his posture sharpened slightly. Rowan's jaw flexed once. He moved toward the empty table at the edge of the management section without taking his eyes off the center of the floor where Penelope Murray danced in another man's arms. He sat, adjusted his cufflinks with deliberate precision, and watched. Other couples had joined the dancing now, filling the floor with movement and laughter. Penny relaxed slightly, no longer the sole focus of attention. Victor said something she didn't quite catch, and she smiled, her head tilting back slightly as the tension in her shoulders eased. Her gaze swept the room and locked onto Rowan's. Everything stopped. Her head turned away fast, breaking the connection. Her throat moved around unspoken words as she swallowed against the sudden tightness in her chest. "Something wrong?" Victor's voice carried concern. "No," the word came out too quickly. "I think the wine went to my head. Maybe we should sit down." Victor's hand had just begun releasing her waist when a presence appeared at Penny's shoulder. Rowan Doyle stood 3 feet away, his attention on Victor. "Beautiful evening, Mr. Lapkin." Penny took a step backward. Rowan's hand caught hers. The contact lasted 1 second, maybe less, but Victor saw it, his eyes narrowed fractionally. Rowan turned his full attention to Penny. "Would you dance with me, Miss Murray?" Victor's smile stayed polished as he took a step back. "I'm glad you could make it tonight, Mr. Doyle." He walked toward his table with measured steps, but his gaze cut back to where Rowan and Penny stood. The music swelled. Rowan extended his hand, and Penny realized with absolute certainty that whatever safety she'd built over the past 3 years was about to shatter completely. Penny was trembling in Rowan's arms. She couldn't stop it. Rowan's gaze dropped to the black lace dress, and something shifted in his expression. His lips curved slightly, not quite a smile, but close. "I thought you'd left, Mr. Doyle." Penny kept her voice steady, even as her pulse slammed through her wrists and temples. Rowan's hand at her waist tightened. He pulled her closer, just an inch, maybe less, but enough that both of them understood what it meant. Couldn't. One word. That was all he gave her. Penny looked up into his eyes, those green eyes she knew better than her own, the same eyes that looked back at her every morning from Ella's face. And this time, unlike yesterday evening in his suite when he'd been cold and distant, he was looking at her the way he had that night in Portsmouth, like she was the only thing in the room worth seeing. Her breath shortened unconsciously. "Why are you trembling?" Rowan's voice came out low, controlled. "A moment ago, you seemed to be enjoying yourself with that man." Penny's gaze dropped to his shoulder. "Mr. Doyle, I don't feel well. Can we sit down?" Rowan paused for half a beat, his hand still firm at her waist. "Then let me take you outside for some air." She looked up at him. His expression carried the kind of confidence that didn't ask permission. The terrace. Before she could answer, his hand shifted to the small of her back, guiding her through the crowd with the same quiet authority he used for everything. Penny moved with him because refusing would draw more attention than complying. The terrace doors opened onto cool May air. Penny's shoulders tensed against the chill. Rowan shrugged out of his jacket and draped it over her shoulders. The fabric held his heat, his scent. Penny's fingers curled, then stilled as she forced herself not to pull the jacket tighter around her body. "Better now?" "No." The word came out before she could stop it. "I'm not." Rowan turned her to face him, his fingers catching her chin and tilting her face up. "What's wrong, Penelope?" His thumb traced the line of her jaw once. "You've been nervous since the moment you saw me. The situation with your father. It was complicated. We found the person responsible, sent him to prison, but you left before I could even apologize to you." His voice roughened slightly. "You didn't even give me 2 minutes to say goodbye." Penny tried to step back. His hand on her shoulder kept her in place. Every point where his skin touched hers felt like fire. "That night," Rowan's grip on her shoulders tightened, "when I told you that you were mine, that I would never let you go. I meant it." His eyes searched hers with an intensity that made her chest ache. "We shared that night together, Penelope. You gave yourself to me. That doesn't happen without feeling something." His hands slid from her shoulders to her arms, thumbs tracing slow circles against her skin. "So tell me, what did you feel?" A tear slipped down Penny's cheek before she could stop it. What could she say? That Maeve had threatened her? That if she ever came near Rowan again, Nora would pay the price? That now there was Ella to protect, and Penny couldn't afford to let him know she existed? Rowan saw the tear. His jaw clenched hard enough that she could see the muscle flex beneath his skin. "Penny." His voice dropped to something dangerous. "What are you hiding from me?" She pulled herself together in one sharp breath, straightened her spine, met his gaze with as much composure as she could force into her expression. "Nothing, Mr. Doyle." Her voice came out steadier than she felt. "I'd like to leave now. Will you let me go?" Rowan's hand caught her wrist. His voice came out quiet but firm. "Stop calling me Mr. Doyle." "Please." She swallowed against the sudden tightness in her throat. "Let me go." Footsteps crossed the terrace behind them. Victor Lapkin appeared with a carefully polished smile, but his attention went straight to Rowan's hand wrapped around Penny's wrist. "Everything all right?" Victor's smile didn't reach his eyes. I came to check on Penny. Rowan's grip tightened on her wrist. His voice came out harder than the night air. No problem, Mr. Lapkin. Don't let us interrupt your evening. Miss Murray used to work for me in Boston. There's an old matter I need to discuss with her. He paused just long enough to make it clear he wasn't asking permission. If you'll excuse us. Victor's gaze cut to Penny's face. Penny? She forced a smile. It's fine, Mr. Lapkin. I'm just helping Mr. Doyle with some information. I'll be back inside in a few minutes. Victor nodded slowly. He turned and walked back toward the ballroom doors with measured steps, but after he stepped inside, he stopped, stood in the light spilling through the glass, watched them. What was Penny's relationship with Rowan Doyle? And was she Rowan's weakness? Rowan leaned close enough that Penny felt his breath against her ear. You're coming with me. He turned away from her and started walking. Rowan? The name escaped before she could stop it. Rowan Doyle, you can't just... His hand still held her wrist. He smiled at the sound of his name from her lips, but his back was to her so she didn't see it. Penny stumbled half a step before finding her footing, pulled along in his wake. She didn't see the smile that crossed his face when she'd said his name, didn't see the way something that looked almost like satisfaction settled into his expression. All she knew was that Rowan Doyle was taking her somewhere, and she had absolutely no idea how to stop him, or if she even wanted to. The elevator doors closed behind them, and silence filled the space. Rowan was giving her time to realize she'd made a choice, and now there was no taking it back. He stood with his hands in his pockets and his back against the mirrored wall. The black lace dress against her pale skin, hair falling forward over her shoulders, his jacket still draped across her shoulders from the terrace. She watched the floor numbers climb. When she looked up, his eyes were already waiting. What do you think you're doing? The words came out sharper than intended. I'm only coming with you to avoid a scene, because I'm a respected employee here and I don't want Mr. Lapkin upset. The corner of Rowan's mouth curved. Not quite a smile. You seem to care quite a bit about Victor. The jacket came off her shoulders and she shoved it at his chest hard enough that he had to catch it. The anger she'd been swallowing since the terrace finally had somewhere to go. You know something? No one calls me Penelope except you. Everyone else calls me Penny. But you keep that distance, even when you say my name. Rowan took one step closer. There was a time when there was no distance between us, Penelope, when I knew exactly how you felt. The elevator doors opened. His hand closed around her wrist and he pulled her down the hallway. Room 5800. He unlocked the door and drew her inside, and the moment the door closed, something shifted from tense to combustible. Penny turned on him. Tonight was important to me. I've been preparing for 6 months, working toward this gala where I could prove I belonged somewhere. She stopped. And then you just showed up. You weren't around for 3 years, and suddenly, boom, you're here, watching me, touching me, acting like you have some kind of right. I don't have the right. Rowan was looking at her like he'd thought he'd lost her permanently. I know that. Then why? He moved. One step forward, and then his hands were framing her face, and his mouth was on hers. The kiss was hard and demanding. He pressed her back against the wall, and her hands came up to push him, but then his thumb traced her jaw, and her body betrayed every intention. 3 years she'd spent learning how to not want this. His mouth left hers and moved to her throat. Rowan, he stopped, pulled back just enough to see her face, raw need in his eyes, both of them breathing too hard. His forehead came down to rest against hers, and he stayed there, close enough that his breath warmed her lips. When he spoke, his voice came out rough, barely above a whisper. I had to see you. I didn't come to Chicago for Victor's hotel or his gala. I came for you. Her pulse hammered. Did you know I was here? His voice came out rough, stripped of the control he usually kept. At first, I was angry. You left so fast. Then I respected your choice. Didn't come after you. His thumb traced her jawline. But every day, Penelope. There wasn't a day I didn't think about you. The anger mixed with the longing, it changed me, made me colder, more ruthless. She'd never seen Rowan Doyle lose control. Her hands moved to his face, Her fingers traced his lips. "I came to see you, that's all. Make sure you were okay. Then walk away. But when I saw you tonight..." He kissed her again, and for a moment Penny let herself believe that maybe this time they could find a way to make it work. A knock sounded at the door. Rowan went still against her, his head lifting away from the kiss. "Not available." The voice from the hallway made Penny's stomach drop. "Rowan, darling, it's me. Surprise." Rowan's gaze locked onto Penny's, and she watched his expression change in real time, watched the softness drain out of it, watched the walls slam back into place. He saw the shift in her eyes too, saw the longing that had been there half a second ago go dull and dead. She pushed against his chest with both hands. He stepped back. "Your fiancé is here, Mr. Doyle." His jaw tightened. He wanted to argue, wanted to explain. "Penelope." "Mr. Doyle." She made her voice empty and professional. "Your guest is waiting." He stared at her for 3 seconds. She could see him weighing his options, send Elizabeth away, or let Penny walk out, possibly for good. He turned and opened the door. Elizabeth Connolly stood in the hallway wearing a red evening gown, and her face lit up the moment she saw Rowan. Her arms went around his neck. "I missed you, my love." Rowan's hands came up and caught Elizabeth's wrists, pulling them down from around his neck. Elizabeth's smile flickered. Her gaze found Penny standing behind Rowan. "Interesting." Penny stepped forward. "I hope the ventilation system doesn't cause you any more problems, Mr. Doyle." Her voice stayed perfectly even. "Good evening, ma'am." She walked past both of them and headed down the hallway without looking back. Behind her, Elizabeth's voice went cold. "Rowan, 1 month before our wedding is not the time for stupidity." Penny kept walking. Inside the room, Rowan watched Penny disappear. Every muscle in his body told him to go after her, to not let her walk away thinking he'd chosen Elizabeth. Elizabeth's hand settled on his waist. He moved away without thinking. "I'm not marrying you, Elizabeth." The words came out flat and final. Silence stretched for 3 seconds. Then Elizabeth's smile returned, brittle. "I don't understand. I hope this isn't about that little tramp." Rowan turned to look at her. Whatever she saw in his face made her take half a step backward. Elizabeth's voice went tight, defensive. "I thought you were a smart man, Rowan." Rowan closed the distance between them and caught her chin, forcing her to meet his eyes. "I'm a man who knows what he wants, and I don't want you." He looked at Arthur in the hallway. "Arthur, take Miss Connolly to her car." "I'm not going anywhere." Elizabeth's voice pitched higher. "You can't just—" Rowan pulled out his phone and dialed. When his secretary Mary answered, he didn't bother with pleasantries. "End the wedding preparations. Issue a statement to the press. Wedding cancelled. Partnership with the Connolly family suspended." He hung up before Mary could respond, before Elizabeth could argue. Elizabeth's face went pale, then red. "My father is going to make you regret you were ever born." Rowan closed the door in her face. In the lobby, Penny stood near the ballroom entrance. She'd wiped her eyes twice tonight, more than she'd cried in 3 years, and straightened her dress. She looked like someone who could walk back into that gala. "Hey, you!" Penny turned to find Elizabeth Connolly crossing the lobby with sharp, angry steps. Arthur followed 3 steps behind, his expression carefully neutral. "Yes, ma'am?" Elizabeth stopped too close, deliberately invading space. "I don't know what you think you are or what game you're playing, but you're going to stop seeing my fiancé." Her voice went harder. "Now, tonight, before this turns into something you can't recover from." The word fiancé landed like a slap, but Penny kept her expression neutral. "I think you've misunderstood, ma'am. I'm not seeing Mr. Doyle. I'm an employee here." She kept her tone polite. "He needed to discuss a ventilation issue in one of our suites. That's all this was." Elizabeth's eyes narrowed into something dangerous. "You think I don't know your type? Women like you see a powerful man with money and latch on, using whatever cheap tricks to get his attention." Penny's voice stayed level, her expression carefully neutral, the professional mask she'd learned to wear when guests crossed lines. "Mr. Doyle doesn't strike me as a man impressed by tricks, ma'am." Something in Elizabeth's expression snapped. Her hand shot out and grabbed a fistful of Penny's hair, yanking hard enough to make her eyes water. "Who do you think you're talking to? I'll have you fired. I'll make sure you never work anywhere respectable again." A hand closed around Elizabeth's wrist, Arthur's. "Miss Connolly." His voice stayed calm. "Please remove your hand from Miss Murray." Elizabeth's head whipped toward him. "The consequences could be very bad, ma'am. I suggest you don't touch her." Elizabeth jerked her hand free and took a step back. For a moment, she just stood there, breathing hard. Then she turned and walked toward the exit with sharp, furious steps. Arthur watched her go until she disappeared through the revolving doors. He looked at Penny and nodded once. "Thank you, Arthur." He started to follow Elizabeth, then stopped and turned back. Mr. Doyle cancelled the wedding. Something in his eyes softened just for a second. "Thought you should know that." Then he was gone, walking through those revolving doors. Penny stood alone in the middle of the lobby with information she had no idea what to do with. Penny pushed through the ballroom doors, and the noise hit her like a wall. Champagne laughter and string quartet layered over 200 conversations. Her hearing aid amplified everything, turning elegant murmur into sharp grating that pressed against her skull. She needed quiet, needed a moment where the world stopped screaming. Her hand moved to the device and she slipped it free, tucking it into her clutch. The world softened into something muffled and distant, better. She scanned the ballroom for Victor Lapkin, but didn't find him. She should apologize for what he'd seen on that terrace, the way Victor's face had shifted from warm to carefully blank when he'd spotted her with Rowan. He'd looked uncomfortable, maybe disappointed, and she'd been the cause of it. He'd been kind to her for a year, the Christmas gift for Ella, the promotion, the way he always stopped to chat in hallways. And she'd repaid that kindness by letting Rowan pull her into dark corners. She moved through the crowd. The French doors to the terrace caught her eye, partially open. Through the glass, she spotted him. Victor stood in the far corner where the light barely reached, and he wasn't alone. Another man stood with him, taller, broader, his back to the windows and his face lost in shadow. They were deep in conversation. Penny started to turn away, but then Victor's lips moved, and even without sound, she recognized the shape of her own name. Penelope Murray. Her body reacted before thought formed. She went still, turned back toward the window, and focused. The other man said something she couldn't catch, his face staying hidden in shadow, but Victor's response came through clear. "Penelope Murray has a connection to Rowan Doyle." The blood drained from her face. She pressed closer to the glass. One hand braced against the surface while her breathing forgot its rhythm. She needed to see the other man's face, needed to know who Victor was talking to about her, but the stranger stayed carefully positioned in darkness. Victor's lips kept moving. She might be his weak point. Penny's breath paused carefully. Except Victor's mouth was still moving. The girl has a 2-year-old daughter. The floor tilted sideways. Penny's knees buckled and she grabbed the nearest table to keep herself upright. Her vision tunneled until all she could see was Victor's face through that window. Pleasant, professional Victor, who remembered Ella's birthday and asked about her day and had just casually mentioned her daughter to a stranger in shadows. Ella. They knew about Ella. "Don't hurt the girl." Victor's expression stayed neutral, almost bored. Men like Doyle don't fear death. They fear loss. He paused, and even without sound, Penny could feel the weight of what came next. "The girl is insurance." Something along Penny's spine woke instantly, pure animal instinct, screaming at her to run, to move, to get Ella and Nora and disappear before whatever this was became something she couldn't escape. She pushed away from the table and turned on her heel. The ballroom spun around her, and her pulse hammered against her throat hard enough that she could feel it in her teeth. 3 years of peace. 3 years of believing Portsmouth was behind her. And now Rowan Doyle had walked back into her life, and suddenly men in shadows knew her name and her daughter's age, and were discussing them both like pieces on a board, like a curse she couldn't shake. She made it halfway across the ballroom before the walls started closing in and the muffled noise pressed against her eardrums like physical pressure. She needed air, needed to think, needed to figure out what to do with information that felt like a loaded gun pointed at everything she'd spent 3 years protecting. Should she go to Rowan and tell him someone was planning something? No. Going to Rowan was what had caused this mess in the first place. Should she go home, pack everything she could carry and be on a bus before morning? Maybe. Probably. Yes. The hotel's front entrance appeared ahead of her, and Penny pushed through the revolving doors hard enough that the mechanism protested. Cool night air hit her face, and she dragged it into her lungs in gulps that didn't quite satisfy the burning in her chest. The lakeside town stretched out ahead of her, quiet streets and scattered lights, and the dark expanse of the water beyond. Penny. The voice came from her left, and she spun to find Arthur crossing the sidewalk toward her with long strides and an expression that suggested he'd been looking for her. Of course he had. Arthur saw everything, and Penny had just bolted from a gala like her dress was on fire. What's wrong? He stopped 3 feet away, his gaze moving over her face in a way that was probably cataloguing every sign of panic she was currently broadcasting. You look... I need to go home. The words came out too fast, too sharp, stripped of everything except raw urgency. I need to leave, now. Arthur's posture sharpened slightly. Let me take you to Mr. Doyle. Whatever happened... No. Her voice cracked on the word. I need to go home, Arthur, please. She stepped off the curb and raised her hand for a taxi. One pulled over almost immediately, and she pulled the door open and slid into the back seat. Arthur stood on the sidewalk, watching her with careful attention. Penny reached for the door to close it. Then the thought hit her. Rowan was here, in this hotel, and if Victor was planning something, if that man in shadows was planning something, Rowan didn't know. He'd walk right into whatever trap they were setting. She couldn't just leave him to it. Arthur! She leaned forward, gripping the edge of the open door. He stepped closer to the taxi, leaning down to see her face. What is it? Mr. Doyle shouldn't stay at this hotel. The words tumbled out, quiet and urgent. The owner, Mr. Lapkin? I think he's planning something against Mr. Doyle. Arthur went very still. What did you see? I can't... Penny shook her head. I don't have time to explain. Please, Arthur, just watch him. Don't let him stay here tonight. It's not safe. Penny. Arthur's voice dropped lower. Tell me what happened. She shook her head again and pulled the door closed. The taxi pulled away from the curb and Penny watched Arthur's figure shrink in the rear window. He stood on the sidewalk with his phone already in his hand, his attention fixed on the hotel entrance. Rowan would be fine. Arthur would warn him. And tomorrow she'd make plans, real plans, bus tickets and new cities, and making sure Ella never became anyone's leverage against anyone. I'm sorry, Rowan. The buildings outside blurred into scattered lights. She was choosing Ella's safety over everything else, the same choice she'd made 3 years ago. It was the right choice, even if it felt like tearing something vital out of her chest. I have to protect Ella and Nora. Penny turned her face toward the window and watched the shoreline slip past. 5 minutes later, Arthur stood in Rowan's suite explaining what had just happened outside the hotel. Rowan's face was tight, his jaw set with worry. Arthur finished with, She was terrified, boss. Rowan's jaw flexed once. He reached for his jacket and pulled it on. Did you get Penny's address? Arthur had his phone out already, GPS location marked from the moment the taxi pulled away. He turned the screen toward Rowan. Rowan grabbed his keys. We're going to Penny's, now. He moved toward the door. Call the men, 2 cars, everyone armed. Arthur was already dialing. Penny was packing fast, shoving clothes into suitcases, hands working on autopilot, while Nora gathered Ella's things from the bedroom. Penny, where are we going? Nora appeared in the doorway with an armful of tiny clothes, her face tight with frustration and fear. Our whole life is here. My school, my friends, your job. Her voice cracked. We ran from Portsmouth 3 years ago, and now we're running again? Is this how we're going to live forever? Penny didn't stop moving. I don't know, Nora. Right now, I just know we need to leave." Ella started crying in her crib. Penny crossed to her and lifted her daughter into her arms, pressing her close and breathing in that baby-soft scent. "Shh, baby. Mommy's here." "We'll take the train," she said to Nora over Ella's head. "Buy tickets to the first place with availability. Find a motel." "And then what?" Nora shoved the clothes into a duffel bag with more force than necessary. "I don't know." Penny's voice came out raw. "I need time to think, Nora. Right now, I just need to keep us safe." A knock sounded at the door. Penny froze with Ella in her arms. Her weight shifted to prevent movement, every muscle locking down. "Don't answer it," she whispered. Nora's eyes went wide. They stared at each other across the small living room. "Who knocks at 11:30 at night?" Nora's voice barely carried. The knock came again. Harder. More insistent. Penny held Ella tighter, feeling her daughter's small body press against her chest. Nora moved to the door, with hands shaking so bad Penny could see the tremor from across the room. She reached for the handle and pulled it open. Rowan Doyle stood in the hallway. He looked at Nora first, and the first word out of his mouth was her name. "Hello, Nora." Then his gaze moved past her to where Penny stood pressed against the far wall with a child in her arms, and his lips parted, breath catching. Penny felt her knees weaken and pressed her back harder against the wall for support. Rowan was about to learn everything, and she couldn't protect Ella from this anymore. Rowan stepped inside, and Arthur followed close behind, filling the small space with too much height and too much silence. Rowan walked toward Penny with slow, deliberate steps. His gaze held hers for a long moment. She saw questions there, saw pain, and then his eyes dropped to the child in her arms. His hand lifted before he could stop himself, and his fingers touched Ella's soft hair, traced down to her cheek. He looked at her eyes. He didn't need to ask. Everything showed on Penny's face. Something shifted in Rowan's chest, a physical ache that made it hard to draw breath, but there wasn't time to process what this meant. Right now, he needed to get them somewhere Victor Lapkin couldn't reach. He said nothing. His gaze moved to the packed suitcases by the door, then back to Penny's face. His hand lifted again, and this time his fingers found her cheek. "You know, no one else can keep you safe, Penelope. Just me." Penny looked away. She couldn't hold his gaze. "I'll take her." Nora stepped forward and reached for Ella. "Come here, sweetie." Ella went to her, small arms wrapping around Nora's neck, and Penny felt the loss of her weight, like losing ballast in a storm. Across the room, Arthur stood perfectly still, his attention moving between the little girl in Nora's arms and Rowan's profile. The resemblance wasn't subtle, the same green eyes, the same facial features. Anyone could see it. Rowan looked at Ella again, his gaze held there for a beat too long, then moved back to Penny. She stood there, not breathing, waiting for him to say something. "I'm taking you out of here," Rowan said quietly. "To Chicago. Tonight. Then we'll figure out where you need to go." 10 minutes later, Penny sat in the back seat of Rowan's car with Ella asleep in her lap and the lakeside town disappearing in the rearview mirror. Rowan had his head tipped back against the seat, his eyes fixed on the small girl whose face was tucked against her mother's shoulder. He couldn't look away. Hadn't been able to look away since the moment Nora opened that door. "Mommy?" Ella stirred against Penny's chest, her voice thick with sleep. "Where are we going?" "Somewhere nice, baby." Penny pressed a kiss to her daughter's forehead. "You just keep sleeping, okay?" Ella's eyes drifted closed again. Penny glanced sideways at Rowan and found him still watching Ella with an expression she'd never seen on his face before. Pain, confusion, and a softness she'd never seen in him. His eyes glistened like he was holding back tears he'd never let fall. Her voice shook when she tried to speak. "Rowan, Not now, Penelope." His voice came out rough. "I don't want to talk about this now." He turned his face toward the window, but his hand moved across the seat between them and found hers in the darkness. His fingers laced through hers and held on tight enough to hurt. They didn't speak again for the entire 30-minute drive. Rowan's hotel in Chicago was all glass and steel and the kind of money that whispered instead of shouting. He took them straight to the top floor and unlocked a penthouse suite that was bigger than Penny's entire apartment. "You'll stay here. Security's tight. No one gets past the front desk without clearance." Then he was gone, closing the door behind him before Penny could find words. She stood in the middle of the living room trying to remember how to breathe. "You need to talk to him." Nora settled Ella on the massive bed and turned to face her sister. "You know that, right?" "I know." Penny sank down on the edge of the mattress. "He's not ready. Did you see his face? He looked—" She couldn't finish the sentence. "Heartbroken," Nora supplied quietly. "He looked heartbroken, Penny. But he also looked at Ella like she was the most precious thing he'd ever seen." She reached out and tucked a strand of hair behind Penny's ear. "This man loves you. And anyone with eyes can see that little girl is his daughter. Those green eyes don't lie." Penny bit down on her lower lip hard enough to taste copper. "Go," Nora said softly. "I'll get Ella settled." Penny stood on unsteady legs and moved toward the door. The time for running was over. The time for truth had come, whether she was ready for it or not. Penny's heart slammed against her ribs as she stood outside Rowan's door. Her hand hovered near the wood, hesitating. 3 years of running had brought her to this moment. Standing on the wrong side of a door, she wasn't sure she had the right to open anymore. She knocked softly. The door swung open immediately, like he'd been waiting, like he knew she'd come. Rowan filled the doorway, shirt unbuttoned at the collar, sleeves rolled to his forearms. His green eyes found hers, and something flickered there. Relief, anger, longing, all tangled together in a way that made her chest tighten. "I need to talk to you," she said quietly. He stepped aside without a word. She walked past him into the room, felt his presence close the door behind her. The click of the lock echoed louder than it should have. Rowan moved to the small bar cart, poured 2 fingers of whiskey into a glass. He didn't offer her one. Instead, he leaned against the wall, glass in hand, and just looked at her. The silence stretched. "You're not going to say anything?" The question came out smaller than she intended. "You're the one who came to talk." His tone was calm, too calm. The kind of calm that meant he was holding everything else back. Penny tucked her hair behind her ear, a nervous habit she'd never been able to break. Her hands felt useless at her sides. She'd prepared for this conversation a dozen times in her head over the last 3 years, but standing here now, facing him, every rehearsed word disappeared. "You didn't ask me anything," she said, finally meeting his eyes. "About her, about Ella. You didn't—" "I know the answers, Penelope." He took a slow sip of whiskey, watching her over the rim of the glass. "I was just waiting for you to tell me yourself." Her throat went dry. She swallowed hard, needing to sit before her legs gave out. She sank onto the edge of the couch. A second later, Rowan pushed off the wall and sat beside her. Not close enough to touch, but close enough that she could feel the heat coming off him. He turned toward her, waiting. She stared at the floor, her fingers twisting together in her lap. "I was just trying to protect them. Nora, Ella. I thought if I could build something safe, something stable." His hand caught her chin, firm but not rough, and turned her face toward his. "Look at me when you talk to me, Penelope." He leaned closer. "You made choices that took courage. Show me that same courage now." Her eyes stung. She blinked fast, trying to hold it together. "Why didn't you ask? About Ella? You saw her eyes. You knew. But you didn't say anything." Rowan's jaw shifted. He set the glass down on the side table, hard enough that the sound cracked through the quiet. "What do you want me to ask?" His voice was still controlled, but barely. "Whether you want me to ask why you hid my daughter from me for 3 years? Or maybe I should ask why being with me didn't feel safe enough to tell me you were carrying my child?" His grip tightened slightly on her chin, forcing her to hold his gaze. "Or should I ask what the hell I did to make you think I didn't deserve to know I had a daughter?" She flinched, not from his touch, but from the rawness in his voice. He let go of her face, leaned back, dragged both hands through his hair. Which question do you prefer, Penelope? Her pulse hammered in her ears. She'd seen Rowan angry before, cold, controlled, terrifying in his stillness. But this was different. This was personal. This was pain dressed up as fury. Or maybe, he continued, leaning closer, we should talk about what you're still hiding. Like what the hell happened with Victor Lapkin. Penny stood abruptly. Maybe this isn't the right time. You're drinking too much. His hand shot out, caught her wrist, and pulled her back down onto the couch. Not hard, but deliberate. He leaned in close, both hands framing her face now, his eyes burning into hers. Don't you ever try to walk away from me again, Penelope Murray. His voice was low, rough, barely more than a whisper. I will find you. I don't care if you run to the other side of the world. I will track you down. And if I have to chain you to my bed to keep you from leaving again, I'll do it. Do you understand me? Her body went rigid. She tried to pull back, but he held her there. You're not the same man I knew in that house. The words came out bitter, laced with disappointment. Something cracked across his expression, hurt, sharp, and immediate. He let out a harsh, humorless laugh. I thought you were different. Turns out you betrayed me just like everyone else. That broke through her control. Penny shoved him back, her own hands rising between them like a barrier. She wasn't sad anymore. She was furious. The words came out shaking with anger, her pale skin flushing red. You think leaving Boston was easy for me, Rowan? You think starting over with nothing was some kind of choice I wanted to make? Her eyes filled, but she didn't let the tears fall. I had to, because your family is terrifying. You kept telling me you'd protect me, but how were you supposed to protect me from your own family? She cracked. How were you supposed to protect our daughter? Rowan's expression shifted, confusion, then dread. His next words came out flat, dangerous. What are you hiding from me, Penelope? Just say it. She pulled in a breath, felt it shake on the way out. That night, she whispered, after the ambulance left. All I wanted was to be with you. I wanted to run to you. But Maeve... She stopped, forcing herself to continue. Maeve told me I didn't belong with you, that someone like you didn't have room for love, that I wasn't right for you. He gripped his head, fingers digging into his scalp. He leaned back hard, exhaling through clenched teeth. Penny's words came faster now, stumbling over each other. She said if I came near you again, Nora would pay for it. The air left the room. Rowan's entire body went still, his jaw locked tight, muscles straining beneath his skin. When he looked at her again, his eyes were fire. Maeve threatened you. A single tear slipped down Penny's cheek. I'm sorry. I didn't have a choice. I was scared. That's why I got in the car. That's why I left. Her voice dropped to barely more than a whisper. But I didn't take the money. Not even a cent. Damn it, Maeve! The glass hit the wall before she registered he'd moved. It exploded into glittering shards, whiskey streaming down the white paint. He turned on her, eyes blazing. She offered you money. Penny's hands flew to her ears, body curling inward on instinct. Rowan saw it and froze. He crossed the space between them in 2 strides, dropped to his knees in front of her, and pulled her into his arms. God, Penelope, I'm sorry. The words came out broken. I didn't mean to scare you. I'm not angry at you. I'm angry at myself. He pressed her head to his chest, fingers threading through her hair, his other hand tight around her waist. I should have seen it. I should have known Maeve would do something like that. His breath was unsteady against her temple. I spent 3 years thinking you left because you wanted to, that I wasn't enough. He pulled back just enough to brush the tear from her cheek with his thumb. In that house, he said quietly, with you. I felt like myself for the first time in years. Someone I didn't recognize. Someone I actually liked. He paused. I don't trust people, Penelope. Everyone I've ever trusted has betrayed me. I thought you did too, and when you left, whatever good you saw in me, I lost it. Penelope's hands came up, cradling his face between her palms. She shook her head slowly. No. She held his gaze, steady despite the tears. You're the only person in this world I trust completely. Don't say that. Don't ever say that. Rowan closed his eyes, leaning into her touch like a man who'd been starving. When he opened them again, he could barely speak. "I have a daughter I've never met, and I couldn't protect either of you." Penny kissed him. Not soft, not tentative. She kissed him like she was pulling him back from the edge of an abyss. And just like that, the man she'd known in Portsmouth was back. The kiss caught fire. Rowan's hands slid into her hair, angling her head as his mouth moved over hers with desperate precision. Penny climbed into his lap without thinking, her body remembering what her mind had tried to forget. He broke the kiss just long enough to speak, his lips barely leaving hers. "Penelope," he whispered, the word coming out rough. "I need to feel you. I need to know you're real, that I didn't lose you, that I'm not losing you again." She didn't answer with words. Her hands moved up his chest, slow and deliberate, feeling the tremor beneath all that iron control. He was always steel, always unbreakable. Not now. She reached up, steadying him. "You didn't lose me," she breathed. "I was taken from you." Something broke open inside him. He cupped her face, thumbs tracing her cheekbones like he was mapping every detail. "You meant everything," she whispered. "You still do." The room quieted around them. Not tense, not dangerous. Just two people standing in the wreckage of years they'd never gotten back. Rowan kissed her again. Slower this time. Not claiming, searching. His lips moved against hers like he was relearning something sacred, something he'd thought lost forever. He traced down her spine, pulling her closer until there was no space left between them. She felt the heat of him, the solid weight of his presence, and the tightness in her chest finally eased. It wasn't hunger driving them now. It was reunion. He reached for the hem of her sweater, fingers brushing against the skin beneath. He paused, giving her time to pull away. She didn't. When he lifted the fabric slowly, her breath caught, not from shock, but from recognition. His touch still knew her. Still fit. "You're shaking," he murmured against her neck. She reached for his hand, laced their fingers together. "So are you." A quiet, broken laugh escaped him. His mouth traced a slow path down her throat, every kiss landing like a promise instead of a demand. He touched her as if time might steal her again. She gripped his shoulders, body arching toward him without thought. She could feel the restrained strength in his touch, the way he was holding himself back even now, dangerous and tender in a way he showed no one else. "Rowan?" The word came out like surrender. She ran her fingers through his hair, holding him there, grounding them both. "I never stopped loving you," she whispered. Something inside him snapped open, not anger, not hunger, relief and pain and love all tangled together. He pulled her closer, buried his face in the curve of her neck, and breathed her in like she was oxygen itself. "You feel like home," he said into her neck, the words muffled. "The only place I'm not at war." Penny's body melted into his. His heartbeat was strong and heavy beneath her palm, real and alive, and for the first time in years she felt safe. Not protected by walls, protected by him. "I scare myself without you," he admitted quietly. She pulled back just enough to meet his eyes. "Then don't be without me." He kissed her again, slower, deeper, like he had all the time in the world and intended to use every second of it. And for the first time in 3 years, Penny stopped running. Penny woke wrapped in Rowan's scent, tobacco and amber, dizzying and dark. His arm lay heavy across her waist, his breathing steady against her shoulder blade. The morning light filtered through the curtains, painting everything soft and gold. But the moment felt incomplete. She slipped out carefully, mindful not to wake him, and padded barefoot down the hall to the other bedroom. Ella slept curled on her side beside Nora, one small fist tucked beneath her chin, dark hair fanned across the pillow. Penny lifted her daughter gently, felt her familiar weight in her arms. The walk back felt longer than it should have. She eased onto the bed beside Rowan, laying Ella between them as carefully as she could. The little girl stirred but didn't wake, just tucked herself closer to the warmth on either side. Penny's vision blurred. She'd never let herself imagine this. Not once in 3 years. The fear had been too strong, the impossibility too complete. But here they were, the three of them together in one bed, breathing the same air, existing in the same impossible moment. It felt like the most beautiful thing in the world. Rowan's eyes opened slowly. His arm reached for Penny, then stopped halfway when his hand found something much smaller. He froze. Then he smiled. It started slow, creeping across his face like sunrise, and Penny watched his entire expression transform. He ran his fingers through Ella's dark hair, so gentle it barely disturbed the strands. Then he leaned down and breathed her in. "As beautiful as you, Penelope," he whispered. Ella's tiny hand shot out in her sleep, caught his finger, and held on tight. Rowan's jaw worked. His eyes glistened. Penny smiled despite her own tears. "She looks just like you. Same eyes." He bit down on his lower lip, staring at their daughter like she might disappear if he looked away. When he spoke again, the words came out rough. "I can't be who I was before, Penny." He swallowed hard. "I used to be fearless, but now—" His gaze moved between them. "I'm terrified of losing you. Both of you." Penny reached across Ella, cupping his face. "I know you'll figure this out. I met a very smart man in Boston once. Strategic. Always 3 steps ahead." Her thumb traced his cheekbone. "Fear will make you more careful, and even smarter." Rowan pulled them both closer, one arm around Penny, the other carefully cradling Ella's small form between them. But behind his eyes, the wheels were already turning. He couldn't afford to lose, not anymore. This final game had only one acceptable outcome. Victory. 2 black cars pulled up outside the Halcyon Grand just past 2 in the afternoon. Rowan sat in the back seat, watching Arthur finish a phone call. When his head of security lowered the phone, Rowan raised an eyebrow. "All set, boss. We got Victor Lapkin's accountant." Rowan's mouth curved, but the expression carried no warmth. "Good." He stared at the hotel entrance. "Last night, Penelope read Lapkin's lips. Boston expansion. Targeting our properties." His jaw tightened. "And he's planning to use Penny and Ella as leverage against me." Arthur's expression went cold. Rowan's voice dropped lower. "Now let's see how well this man lies to my face." They crossed the marble lobby in silence, drawing stares from guests and staff alike. Rowan moved like he owned the building, because soon enough he would. Victor Lapkin met them at his office door, all manufactured charm and expensive suit. "Mr. Doyle, welcome." He gestured them inside. "Please, sit." Rowan settled into the chair across from Victor's desk, Arthur standing slightly behind and to his left. Professional, contained, ready. "I assume you've had time to consider my offer," Rowan said evenly. Victor's smile widened. "I was hoping you'd give me a few more days." "I've decided I don't have that kind of time." Rowan's tone didn't shift. "I need your answer now." Victor leaned back, studying him. The shift was subtle but deliberate, from businessman to predator. "You know my employee Penny Murray quite well, I think." Rowan's expression didn't change. He simply looked at Victor and waited. Victor smiled. "She's someone I value." Arthur shifted, glancing at Rowan. Rowan remained silent, but beneath the table, his hand slowly curled into a fist. "What does Miss Murray have to do with our business, Mr. Lapkin?" Rowan's tone stayed calm, controlled. Victor's smile turned knowing. "I saw you two talking yesterday. Penny seemed uncomfortable, and today she didn't show up for work." He paused. "That's not like her. So I sent someone to check her apartment. But she wasn't there. Her daughter and sister weren't there either." Rowan said nothing. Victor watched him closely, reading his expression. "Losing her would upset me." Rowan's jaw locked tight. Victor continued, voice smooth. "Here at the Halcyon Grand, we're family." A smile spread across his face. "Little Ella practically grew up here." Arthur's hand moved under the table, gripping Rowan's wrist in warning. "Boss," he breathed. Rowan stood. Victor leaned back, looking up at him. I'm just worried about them. I have some very reliable people searching for them. You wouldn't happen to know where they are, would you? Our business isn't about Penelope. Rowan's tone could have cut glass. It's about this hotel. What's your answer? I don't have all day. Victor rose to match him, spreading his hands in false apology. I'm afraid I have to decline your generous offer. The Halcyon Grand isn't for sale. I'm sorry I can't give you what you want. Something dangerous flickered across Rowan's face. A smile that didn't reach his eyes. The kind of expression that made smart people take a step back. That's fine, Victor. He buttoned his jacket with deliberate precision. I already got what I came for. He turned and walked out before Victor could respond. Arthur followed, pulling the door closed behind them. They didn't speak until they reached the elevator. Victor showed his hand, Rowan said quietly, pressing the button for the lobby. We just made our first move. The elevator doors slid open. Now it's time for the second. By the time they reached Boston, Rowan had already doubled security. He settled Penny, Nora, and Ella into his house in Beacon Hill, stone walls and iron gates. 8 men patrolled the perimeter in rotating shifts. No one got in, no one got out. Before he left for the office, he stopped in the bedroom doorway. Penny lay curled around Ella, both of them asleep. Morning light caught in their matching dark hair, made their breathing rise and fall in sync. Rowan crossed the room quietly, leaned down and pressed a kiss to Ella's forehead. Then Penny's. Her hand shot out, caught his wrist. Rowan? He turned back, brought her hand to his lips. What is it? She pushed herself up on one elbow, eyes still heavy with sleep. Don't get your hands dirty. Please. Her voice came out soft but urgent. Don't let anyone get hurt. He held her gaze, thumb tracing circles on her palm. I won't lay a hand on anyone myself. You have my word. She smiled, relief washing across her face. Thank you. He adjusted his cufflinks, straightened. I'll be back by noon. We're having a guest this afternoon. Penny sat up fully now. Who? Rowan fixed his tie in the mirror, not looking at her. Someone I need to settle accounts with. He walked out before she could ask anything else. Elizabeth Connolly was already waiting outside his office when he arrived. She stood near the door, arms crossed, jaw tight with barely contained fury. Rowan barely spared her a glance as he approached. Elizabeth! His tone was flat, empty. You beat me here. What do you want? She pushed off the wall, following him inside without invitation. Are you kidding me right now, Rowan? He moved behind his desk, didn't sit, just waited. You cancelled our wedding for some hotel maid? Her voice climbed higher. Do you have any idea what you did to me? I'm humiliated. The entire city... Elizabeth, he cut her off cleanly. You do a fine job humiliating yourself without my help. Her eyes flashed. I thought you liked that about me. My audacity. She stepped closer to the desk. You never had a problem with my the ends justify the means philosophy before. What changed? Her head tilted. What's so special about her? Rowan finally sat, fingers steepled in front of him. You sold yourself for money. You know that, right? He watched her reaction carefully. And I'm sorry I was in a position where I had to consider accepting, but let's not pretend there was ever going to be love between us. We both know you don't love me either. So what's this really about? Elizabeth's palm slammed down on the desk. Nobody uses me and throws me away, Rowan Doyle. I don't care who you are. He stood slowly, meeting her eye to eye across the mahogany surface. I didn't use you. You came to me with a proposal. We made a deal. Now I've decided the deal doesn't benefit me anymore. Then you should know I'm going to make your little girlfriend's life hell. Her smile turned vicious. Anyone who crosses me pays for it. Rowan leaned forward, both hands flat on the desk. The second you try to hurt Penelope, I'll bury you and your father under that company of yours. His voice dropped to something cold and absolute. And you know I keep my promises. Elizabeth stared at him, eyes narrowed to slits. She shook her head slowly, then turned on her heel and walked out. The door closed behind her with a sharp click. Rowan sank back into his chair. Elizabeth Connolly and her petty schemes would have to wait. He had bigger threats to handle. Penny and Nora sat in the living room, watching Ella stack blocks on the rug. The little girl knocked them over with a delighted squeal, then started again. Nora glanced around the space. High ceilings, dark wood, tall windows. It looked more like a fortress than a home. Never thought we'd be back here. She picked at the edge of a throw pillow. Are we staying? Penny shook her head. Rowan said we'll get our own place, a fresh start. She watched Ella grab another block. Maybe not even in Boston. Nora shrugged. Changing schools is basically a hobby at this point. But yeah, it'd be nice to actually settle somewhere. Penny smiled at her sister. I know. The television murmured in the background, some afternoon news program neither of them had been paying attention to, until the breaking news banner flashed across the screen. Prominent Chicago businessman and owner of the Halcyon Grand Hotel, Victor Lapkin, was taken into federal custody early this morning following a multi-agency investigation led by the FBI. Penny's breath caught. She shot to her feet, hands covering her mouth. Oh my God! The anchor continued. Authorities confirmed that Lapkin faces multiple charges, including money laundering, wire fraud, tax evasion. Rowan walked into the living room. He looked at Penny first, then the television. His expression didn't change. Penny turned to him, searching his face. Rowan, what happened? He loosened his tie, unbuttoned his collar, and dropped onto the couch. Come here, Penelope. She sat beside him slowly, questions written all over her face. When someone threatens my family, he said quietly, they pay the price. That's what happened. Penny looked down. I thought he was a good person. Rowan caught her chin, tipped her face back up until she met his eyes. He was a pawn for the Russian mafia, Penny. He wasn't arrested for nothing. Her eyes narrowed slightly. Dirty business always comes to light eventually, doesn't it? Her voice dropped. If you have enemies, you're always in danger, and the bigger you are, the more enemies you make. Rowan's throat worked. He held her gaze. As long as nothing happens to you, I'll pay whatever price comes. Arthur appeared in the doorway. Boss? Rowan gave a single nod and stood. He crossed the living room without looking back, climbed the stairs to his home office. The door was already open. Maeve sat in the leather chair across from his desk, spine straight, hands folded in her lap. Her face gave nothing away. She looked at him as he entered, voice as cold as he'd ever heard it. You've been avoiding me for days. Is that a new habit you've picked up? Her eyes tracked him as he moved behind the desk. What's going on, Rowan? He sat without answering right away, settled back into his chair. Let the silence stretch. You cancelled the wedding, Maeve said finally. Why? Rowan laced his fingers together on the desk surface, studied her for several long seconds. I've always loved you, Maeve. His voice came out quiet, measured. Like a mother. I respected you, never questioned you, and you always protected me. Maeve's chin lifted slightly. Because you're my son, Rowan. I've raised you since you were 6 years old. A smile ghosted across his mouth, there and gone. You never had a mother's warmth. Control was all you knew, shaping me the way you wanted, making sure no one knew you were the real power behind the Doyle name. He paused. We all played our parts. My father, Killian, me. Maeve's lips curved into something that might have been a smile if it hadn't looked so bitter. You were always the one who challenged me most. Her voice softened just a fraction. The strongest of all of them. But the moment you threatened Penelope Murray to drive her away from me, you crossed a line. His knuckles whitened against the desk. You threatened her using her sister. Used Nora as leverage. He paused, jaw tight. After everything we'd already done to her family. His voice dropped. That girl still saved my life, Maeve. Maeve's expression didn't change. Calm, cold. Love makes you weak, son. When you run the Doyle family, weakness means death. Haven't I taught you that? Rowan leaned forward. Because of you, I never met my daughter. I spent 3 years thinking the woman I loved ran from me because she was afraid. Maeve's eyebrows lifted, just barely. So, there's a child. Killian and Gorski are working together against me because I shut down their operations. Rowan's voice stayed level. Now they're trying to use Penelope and Ella as leverage to take back control. Maeve gestured toward him. You see, this is exactly what I was trying to tell you. They're your weakness. The moment you let them into your life, they become targets, just as vulnerable as you are. Rowan's smile turned sharp, humorless. I don't know what turned you into someone without a heart, Maeve. Growing up with you, I never let myself fall for anyone. Until Penelope. He paused. You're complete opposite. Maeve looked out the window, shoulders rigid. Did you call me here to tell me you're building a happy family with your girlfriend and daughter? No. Rowan reached for the envelope on his desk. I called you here because you owe me. Her head snapped back toward him. Rowan slid the envelope across the mahogany surface. Killian didn't just destroy our reputation. He stole from us. From you, from everyone in this family. He kept his eyes locked on hers. He made deals with Gorski that put all of us at risk. When I cut those operations, I wasn't being soft. I was stopping us from going to prison. Maeve's fingers curled against the armrest. I didn't know. You didn't know because you didn't want to know. His voice cut clean. You saw Killian as family, as your brother, as the old guard. But he's poison, Maeve. He tapped the envelope. And now he's working with Gorski again to destroy me, to destroy Doyle's. His jaw set. And when Gorski threatened Penelope and Ella to get to me, Killian crossed a line there's no coming back from. Maeve's eyes narrowed. Are you going to kill him? No. Rowan sat back. I'm not killing anyone. He gestured to the envelope again. There are flash drives inside. Evidence of everything he stole from you, from us. And proof that if the FBI gets hold of what he's been doing through the Doyle Company, we all go down. Maeve stared at the envelope. What do you want from me? Rowan's expression hardened. You want forgiveness. You want to be part of my life? Ella's life? He leaned forward again. Earn it. Silence stretched between them. Killian is your problem now. Family business. Internal threat. Rowan's voice dropped. You handle him, however you need to. I don't want to know how. Just do it. Maeve's breath stilled. You do this. You prove you choose us over the old ways. You choose Ella's safety over Killian's loyalty. He held her gaze without blinking. You don't do this. You're out. No family, no business, no Ella. Ever. Silence filled the office. Maeve reached for the envelope slowly, turned it over in her hands. You still love me, she said quietly. Not quite a question. Rowan's voice came out cold. Final. If I didn't care about you, we wouldn't be having this conversation right now. Maeve stood, envelope in hand, and walked toward the door. She paused, looked back at him one last time. Then she opened the door. A small figure darted past in the hallway, dark hair, bright red dress, running fast. Maeve stopped and looked down. Ella skidded to a halt, tilted her head back to meet the stranger's eyes. Her smile came easy, unguarded. Maeve's expression shifted. Something soft broke through the ice. When she looked up, Penny stood at the end of the hall, one hand braced against the wall, watching. Their eyes met. Maeve almost smiled. She gave a single nod. Welcome to the family, Penny Murray. Penny slipped into the home office and closed the door behind her. Rowan sat in his chair, watching her cross the room. His expression softened in a way she'd only started seeing in the last few days. Something warm that hadn't been there 3 years ago. I spent 3 years imagining what it would be like to see you in this house, he said quietly. She came closer. He reached for her, pulled her down into his lap. She settled against him, tried to smile, but couldn't quite manage it. What's going on, Rowan? Her voice came out smaller than she wanted. First Victor Lapkin, now Maeve Doyle. His thumb traced along her cheekbone. I'm doing what I need to do to protect my family, Penelope. Don't keep me in the dark like this. She caught his wrist, held it. We've been in this together from the start. Help me understand. His hand moved to cup her jaw, gentle. Victor's accountant was very helpful. We got everything we needed to send to the FBI. Penny's brows pulled together. You threatened him? Rowan leaned back slightly, eyes steady on hers. I didn't hurt anyone, Penny. We just obtained the necessary information through the necessary channels. She swallowed. And Maeve? Maeve's the only mother figure I've ever known. His voice stayed even, controlled. She can be ruthless, but at the end of the day, everything she has is tied to me. She'll always do what it takes not to lose me. He paused. This time, she'll pay the price for what she's done. Penny wrapped her arms around him, pressed her face into his neck. He breathed her in, fingers sliding into her hair. This life, she whispered against his skin, your world, it still scares me. She pulled back just enough to meet his eyes. Living on the edge of a knife. I don't know how long I can stand the fear that something will happen to you. Or to Ella. Rowan kissed her forehead, let his lips linger there. I'm building us a different life, love. One where we leave all of this behind. Her breath caught. She searched his face. You're really going to do that? He kissed her mouth, slow and sure. I'd do anything for you, Penelope. A knock at the door. They both turned. Nora stood in the doorway, phone in hand, face tight with something between worry and anger. What's wrong? Penny straightened in Rowan's lap. Did something happen? Nora held out her phone. I think you need to see this. Penny took it, Rowan looking over her shoulder at the screen. Instagram. Boston Magazine's verified account. The headline hit like a fist. Boston tycoon Rowan Doyle dumps fiancée for hotel maid. Connolly heiress left humiliated 1 month before wedding. Below it, a photo of Elizabeth in tasteful black, dabbing at her eyes with a tissue. The caption underneath dripped with tabloid sympathy. Elizabeth Connolly, 29, spoke exclusively to Boston Magazine about the devastating betrayal that shattered her fairy tale engagement. I gave him everything, the tearful socialite revealed, and he threw it away for a fling with someone who cleans rooms at a hotel. Sources close to Connolly confirm that Doyle not only cheated with a staff member, but also defrauded her father's company in a business deal gone wrong. He used me, Elizabeth stated. He used my family. I should have seen it coming. Penny's hand flew to her mouth. Oh my God, Rowan. Rowan's expression didn't change. He took the phone from her, scrolled through the comments for half a second, then handed it back to Nora. Elizabeth used her strongest weapon. His voice stayed calm, almost bored. But that's all she's got. We have bigger problems than tabloid gossip, Penny. Penny stared at him, eyes wide. What if they dig into me? What if they expose? He pulled her close again, spoke against her temple. When we announce our wedding date, this story becomes yesterday's news. Everyone will be talking about my beautiful bride and our daughter instead. His fingers threaded through her hair. People always forget the old scandal when a better one comes along. Trust me. She pressed her forehead against his chest. What happens now? Her voice barely made it past a whisper. What about Gorski? The Russian mafia? We cut off one of his arms when Lapkin got arrested. Rowan's hand traced slow circles on her back. Once Maeve handles Killian, Gorski won't have anyone left to use against me, and soon, he paused. When I step away from the business, he won't have a reason to come after us anymore. Penny pulled back sharply, stared at him. What did you just say? His mouth curved, just barely. Didn't I tell you? There's nothing I wouldn't do for you, Penelope. 3 days later, Maeve Doyle walked through the reinforced doors of MCY Cedar Junction with her shoulders straight and her face blank. The guard checked her name against the visitor log and nodded once. 15 minutes, ma'am. Killian sat waiting in the visitor room when she arrived. His face had gone thin, eyes hard with the kind of bitterness that came from watching everything slip away. He looked up when she entered and something almost like relief crossed his expression. Maeve, his voice cracked slightly. I knew you'd come. She sat across from him, hands folded on the metal table between them. She didn't speak right away, just studied his face the way she might study a contract she was about to terminate. You're still family, she said finally, That hasn't changed. Killian leaned forward, hope flickering. Then help me. Get me out of here. I can fix this. But family doesn't threaten children, Killian. Her tone stayed calm, empty. And you threatened my granddaughter. His mouth opened, closed, the hope died. Maeve stood. Goodbye, Killian. She turned and walked out without looking back. The guard escorted her to the exit. She signed out, climbed into the waiting car where Arthur sat behind the wheel and didn't say a word until they were 3 miles from the prison. It's done, she said quietly. Arthur's eyes met hers in the rearview mirror. He understood what she meant, what she'd left behind in that prison, the kind of understanding that required no explanation. Rowan stood at his office window overlooking Boston Harbor when Arthur knocked and entered. Boss? Rowan turned, reading Arthur's expression before his head of security said another word. Killian Doyle died in prison last night. Arthur pulled out his phone, brought up the medical report. Heart attack. Prison doctor confirmed it. Natural causes. Rowan took the phone, scanned the report. His jaw shifted once. He handed it back without comment. The timing was too clean, too convenient. His office phone rang, the private line only 4 people had access to. He picked up. Maeve. It's done. Her voice came through steady, final. He won't threaten your family again. Rowan's eyes narrowed. What did you do, Maeve? Silence stretched for 3 seconds. What I had to do for my family, Rowan. Her voice stayed steady, final. You're my family. His throat worked around words that wouldn't come. When can I see my granddaughter? Something in Maeve's tone softened, just barely. Soon. Rowan turned back to the window. But first we leave Boston. He ended the call. Arthur stood near the door, waiting. It's over, Rowan said quietly. All of it. The next day, Rowan stepped out of his downtown Boston office with Penny beside him and camera flashes exploding across his vision. Reporters surged forward, microphones thrust toward them like weapons. Arthur moved to intercept, but Rowan raised one hand. Mr. Doyle! A reporter from the Globe pushed to the front. Your uncle Killian Doyle died in prison last night. What's your response? Rowan stopped at the top of the stairs, his hand finding Penny's elbow. We're saddened, of course. Killian was an elder member of our family. His voice stayed level, professional. Heart attacks can strike anyone at any age. Another reporter called out from the crowd. What about Elizabeth Connolly's accusations? She's claiming you defrauded her father's company. Rowan's jaw shifted once before he answered. Miss Connolly came to me with a business proposal that included marriage as a condition. The arrangement didn't suit me, so I declined. He paused. But if you're looking for a wedding story. He turned slightly, his hand moving from Penny's elbow to the small of her back, and pulled her forward into the light. Camera flashes doubled in intensity. This is Penelope Murray, the mother of my daughter. His voice carried across the crowd with absolute certainty. We're getting married in 20 days. The reporters erupted with questions, but Rowan kept talking. I'd also like to announce that I'm stepping down from active management of Doyle Group. Maeve Doyle will assume leadership, and I'll retain a seat on the board. His eyes swept the crowd. That's all? Thank you. Arthur opened the car door and Rowan guided Penny inside before the reporters could push closer. The door closed, cutting off the shouting voices. The car pulled away from the curb. Penny sat perfectly still for 3 seconds, then started laughing, the kind of laughter that came from shock and relief tangled together. Did you just... She turned to face him. Did you just announce our engagement to the entire Boston press corps? Rowan's mouth curved. He caught her hand and laced their fingers together. Elizabeth wanted headlines. His thumb traced circles on her palm. I gave her headlines. Penny shook her head, still smiling. 20 days? Too soon? Perfect. She squeezed his hand. Where are we going now? Rowan leaned forward and spoke to the driver. Take us north. He settled back against the seat and looked at Penny. Now we go look at our new home. The drive took 3 hours north along the coast. When they finally pulled onto the property, Penny saw the house sat on 3 acres overlooking the Atlantic with white clapboard and a wraparound porch, the kind of quiet that came from being far enough from everything that mattered in Boston. Rowan stepped onto the porch with Ella in his arms, and she pointed toward the water with one small finger. "Ocean!" He kissed the top of her head. "That's right, baby." Penny appeared in the doorway, and Rowan's hand found the small of her back as she moved beside him. "What do you think?" His voice came out quieter than usual. "Too far from everything?" She leaned into him. "That's the point, isn't it?" Ella wiggled free and took off running across the lawn toward the garden, her small legs pumping. Rowan followed and caught her near the stone wall, then dropped onto the grass while she climbed on top of him, giggling. Penny crossed the lawn and settled onto the grass beside them. "She likes it here," Rowan said, looking up at her. "What about you?" He pulled himself to sitting with Ella climbing into his lap, his gaze moving from the house to the water and then back to Penny. "This is the first place I can actually breathe." She reached out and caught his hand. The ocean sound filled the space between words, no sirens, no traffic, just wind and water. "Will that be enough for you, Penelope?" She pulled him closer and kissed him. "It's everything." Ella squirmed between them, pushing at their faces. "My turn!" Rowan lifted her high above his head, and she spread her arms like she was flying. "Again!" Ella shrieked. "Again, Daddy!" The words stopped both of them. Rowan's arms froze mid-air with Ella suspended above him, and his eyes found Penny's with something breaking open in his expression. Penny's vision blurred, but she nodded. He lowered Ella slowly and pulled her against his chest, holding her like he might never let go. When he finally spoke, his voice barely made it past a whisper. "Again, baby girl. As many times as you want." Penny watched them. Her daughter, the man she loved, grass that needed cutting, and an ocean she could hear but not see from where she sat, and felt the last piece of fear finally let go. This was home. And for the first time in 3 years, tomorrow didn't scare her anymore. Thank you so much for listening to Penny and Rowan's story. Penny and Rowan built a new life together, far from Boston's shadows, far from the threats that tried to tear them apart. Now they're watching their daughter grow up in the peace they fought so hard to find. If you enjoyed part 2, please hit that like button and let me know what you thought. Rate the story from 1 to 10 in the comments. I read every single one, and if you want more stories like this, don't forget to subscribe. There are more characters, more secrets, and more love stories waiting. Thanks again for being here. See you in the next one.